I didn't see you there. Hi, it's Kyle from Disco Revolution, and well, I'm here to do kind of a longer style video this time. Hi, how are you doing? This is going to be my albums of 2024. Essentially, my end of year culminating when it comes to music. Just in general, the best albums. I'll be talking about some of the albums I've actually purchased. I will be talking about a crap ton of albums that I heard this year that have kind of changed my entire taste when it comes to metal. Do whatever you want to do with the channel. Subscribe. I'll do my best to try and be consistent with this. I am not very knowledgeable when it comes to music. I am just severely ADHD. I have severe ADHD, and I tend to kind of nosedive into information often. So, yeah, let's do this. On a second note, I want to just kind of admit this right away. My niece is downstairs, so at any time during this recording, if you can hear her crying, I'll try my best to overlay some music and stuff on top of it or edit it out. It's really tough. She has a pair of lungs on her. Yeah, well, anyway, let's get into it. So at number 10 is going to be a fairly new album that I heard, which was Oxygen Destroyer's Gamera-themed album, Guardian of the Universe. So if you guys can't already tell, I am a huge Godzilla fan, as if the wall on my side, well, this is my left, as if the wall on my left side of Godzilla figures is enough to really, explain how much I love Godzilla. I got into this band fairly recently through a recommendation and through, their Godzilla-inspired album, and I heard this album in 2024. The beginning of it is very similar to their 2020 release, which is the Godzilla-themed album, where it starts off with the main character screaming. Obviously, the main character here being Gamera. In general, it is brutal. The entire album, start to finish, was honestly something that I didn't think I'd be hearing, which is, it's kaiju-inspired brutal death metal, which is insane. The drums are hitting as hard as they possibly can. The lead guitarist is going absolutely insane. And every single time the vocalist opens his mouth, I feel like I'm staring into the face of something huge. They did their best to make their songs and music just in general sound large, like quite literally as if a kaiju is stomping through a city. And in general, I genuinely think that was one of the best albums of all of 2024. Definitely one of the best ones that I've heard that year, period. If I could give a recommendation for my favorite song from that album, it's Thy Name is Legion, which is named after the monster of Legion from one of the Gamera films that I can't remember the name of for the life of me. In general, closing thoughts, I don't want to make this too long. This was like a 9.5 out of 10 album. This was honestly incredible. I could listen to it on repeat for hours on end. Genuinely one of the best things I heard this year, and that's why it makes my number 10. At number 9, we have Undying Spectral Resonance. Just to put it in general, this death metal album came from a recommendation from a friend, and I very much liked where it was going. Around the time that I heard the album, I was getting way more into death metal than I originally thought I was. Way more than I thought I was. So this came as a pleasant surprise because it sounded a little bit like what I was listening to, and it sounded plenty familiar to newer style bands. And in general, I don't think I have a favorite on this album. I think all of the songs are probably my favorite because it is just top to bottom really fucking good, and I'm probably gonna get demonetized just for saying that, but it's fine. I don't really know what else to say. This was a really good album, and from an artist or a band that I never even heard of before, this was a really good introduction. If you've never heard of this band before, go listen to them after this. I guarantee it'll be an incredible feeling getting to hear something that sounds familiar, old, and new at the same time. I apologize if you see the camera moving around a lot. I'm like adjusting my phone as I do this to get the names of all the albums I'm trying to list. So if it seems very out of place, I will do my best to try and keep the camera stable from where it is, because I like how this is set up. Anywho, the next entry on the list, I think it's at number 8, is Suffer as One by Living Gate. At the time when I heard this album, I did not know who Living Gate was, and it was until I did a very basic Google research, or Google search, that's when I realized that this was a super group of a couple of my favorite bands in their respective genres. There are members of Yob in here, who is a progressive doom metal band, and yeah, that is just as crazy as you might think it is. I don't remember the other bands, but in general, it is a super group made up of members of a bunch of different death metal and doom metal bands, and quite frankly, this album shows that really well. You can hear all of the influences from pretty much all of the other band members from all of the other bands. Pretty much every song on this album was my favorite song. I don't think I have one particular song that is just like a standout from the rest. It's fairly sludgy, there's a fair amount of doom metal inspiration, I'd say. There are a fuck ton of really good drumming. In general, if you read the Decibel magazine and you got recommendations for this band, you're set for life. It's really good. It is a really good album. I still think that in my personal opinion, I still think there was a lot that could have been done with the Yob side of things, but in general, I was not disappointed. Okay, so at number 7, I have The Nothing That Is by Fit for an Autopsy. So the truth is, I did not know who this band was before a band who is on this list introduced me to their lead singer. And I was blown away. I was quite literally blown away by how good The Nothing That Is as an album. It is a modern metalcore, I wouldn't say masterpiece, but a banger. It is a really good album. My favorite song, I believe, was called Red Horizon. I'm gonna put the screenshot in post to show you what it is. That was a really good song. That is probably my favorite off of that album, and probably by the band, period. In general, really good album. I was really happy that came out so well. And I'm really happy that I got to actually essentially learn about this band in a really good and new way. I'm really excited to talk about the band that introduced me to Fit for an Autopsy. They are at number 2, and you will know because I own their vinyl. At number 6, I have Primordial Sky by Oryx. This is a modern sludge doom drone classic. I genuinely think that this was one of the best albums of the year, if not of the last 2 to 3 years, because in general, doom metal needs to be arguably, it should be back in popularity now, and this band is definitely helping to lead the charge, because this album is brutal, it's punishing, it's nice and sludgy in parts, it's nice and heavy, it's slow, and most importantly, it is loud. If there is something that I didn't like about doom metal beforehand, is that a lot of the times the guitar and everything is very muted to the point that it sounds like Black Sabbath. Now, whilst I am a huge Sabbath fan, in general, I prefer it when my doom is louder, but slow as hell, and heavy. And this is exactly what I like. This and another album that is not on this list, but Obsessive Destruction by Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean have been probably my two most listened to modern doom metal albums of the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years? I'm kidding. Maybe 5-ish years. And in general, this album is incredible. From start to finish, I didn't find myself not liking any of the songs. And my favorite is, of course, the title opening track, Primordial Sky, which is one of the heaviest doom songs I've ever heard. And quite frankly, a song that I can't recommend enough. And now we're gonna get to the top 5, and this is gonna be a very controversial placement for this album. Absolute Everywhere by Blood Incantation. Hey, at most, I put this album in the top 5 so I could please people who love them. Because I know for a fact that people would have made this the best album of last year and one of the best metal albums of last year. But I think that there are four better albums than this album. My thing is, I fucking love this album. From beginning to finish, it was like I was listening to Pink Floyd meets metal, which I'm gonna get to later on. It was psychedelic. It had some synthy parts in it. It was full of death metal, and quite frankly, it just had everything I really like in a very good progressive technical death band, whatever you want to call them. Quite frankly, this was a really good album. I'm gonna say that a million times this video. I'm already calling it. Take a shot every time I say, oh, this is a really good album. My favorite was the third song and the fourth song, but the fourth song, I believe it's called Tablet Number 3. I can't remember. I'll put a screenshot of it. That was my favorite off of the album because it was very heavy. It was it sucked me into the sound really fast, and I really like that because it got me really hooked immediately. And in general, I really like this album, and I think it was among my top 5 of the year. Was it my top 5 most listened to? Hell no, but that doesn't really matter here. Number 4 is a band that I see often get confused with a UK metalcore band of the pretty much exact same name. This is Beyond the Reach of the Sun by Ancients, with 2 eyes. So I was introduced to this album fairly early through a friend who was a friend of the band. And quite frankly, I loved it. It was really good. It was really heavy. It was very progressive. There was a lot of really expressive lyrics. And in general, I loved the guitar playing the most. The lead guitarist in that band is incredible. But the thing I loved the most about the album was the cover. The cover I saw a little bit before release, and wow, it was incredible. I genuinely think that was one of the best looking album arts I have seen in a very long time. In general, this is a really great progressive metal album. I'm not the biggest prog guy in the world. I think the genre can get overly pretentious sometimes and not as heavy as people say it is. But this definitely was an exception to the rule, and quite frankly, I'm actually really glad that I got into this band because it means that I have a basis for what good progressive metal should sound like. Alright. Number 3 is from Sludge Legends High on Fire. It is Cometh the Storm. So, I was already a fan of High on Fire before I heard this album. I was also a fan of Sleep, and in general, Matt Pike is probably one of my favorite guitarists ever in metal. And Cometh the Storm was absolutely incredible from start to finish. It blew me the fuck away about how great this album was, from the album cover to the lyricism to Matt Pike shredding on guitar to absolutely everything. And my favorite song off of the entire album was the first track called Burning Down, which I genuinely want to learn on guitar because in general, I really love the riff. I love the Matt Pike style riffs. I love everything about it. That is hands down my favorite song off of that album. And that is why it is at my number 3. Number 2, I have a very, very special thing. I actually have this album on vinyl. To absolutely nobody's surprise who knows who I am and who I listen to, it's Merciless by Body Count at number 2. In general, I genuinely think that there has not been a good, like, there is one other album that I think has done what this album does to probably a better extent. This isn't a game changer, but it is an absolute masterpiece of speed metal. It is an absolute masterpiece of a little bit of death metal. There are plenty of interlude. There's one interlude in the entire thing that is really good. That reminds me of their first album from way back in the 90s. Every single song that has a feature on it in this album is nothing short of perfection. Ernie C, just incredible guitarist. Pretty much everyone here is on their A game when it comes to this album, including Ice-T, who I genuinely think is probably one of the greatest metal frontmen of all time, and I am going to get absolutely flamed for that take, but it's fine, I don't care. My absolute favorite song from this album was The Purge featuring Corpse Grinder, which is just a straight death metal song. Sure, it doesn't have the same blast beats as Cannibal Corpse, but if it features George fucking Fisher, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a death metal song. And not to mention, just even if that is my favorite album, every song on this album is genuinely incredible. There is a lot of talks about the current state of the world when it comes to war. There is a lot of talks about racism. There are a lot of talks about everything, about every kind of thing you could think of. Even shooters, even gun laws. They talk about it in this album. There's plenty of talks about how corrupt the government is, and just in general, this is by far their best work. And quite frankly, this had to be number 2. I have to review this album, period, because I genuinely think that this is one of the best metal albums of the last 10 to 15 years. And it's no surprise that it came from a band that I learned of last year and got absolutely obsessed to the point of listening to them 6 months in a row on Apple Music. I am not ashamed to admit that I am a fan of this band, and I am not ashamed to admit that I would drop everything to go see them perform some of these songs live. Yeah, that's it. And number 1, to the surprise of absolutely fucking nobody who knows who I am, You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To by Noctilus. So when it comes to this album, I genuinely think that this is probably the most influential and groundbreaking album of the last 20 years. And this, I believe, and I am gonna get flamed for this take, but again, I don't care. I genuinely think that this is probably the best hardcore album of all time, and probably one of the best metalcore albums ever. And I genuinely think that this album is going to be influencing modern metal from now to maybe 5-10 years down the road. This album is a modern day Nevermind, and I'm so happy that Noctilus is getting the attention and the notoriety that they deserve, because they are one of the hardest working bands I have ever seen. They are one of the heaviest bands I've ever heard, and on top of that, they just are easily one of the best albums to come out of 2014 to now, out of the last 10 years, I'd say. And the hate that they get, I genuinely think is jealousy. I don't think that there is a problem with this album. Every single song on this album is nothing short of peak. Everything is tuned incredibly perfectly. everything that this album has just is incredible. Brian is just going off. Isaac on guitar is further proving that he is one of the best metalcore guitarists ever. Poppy coming out of a more metal focused phase to bring in a modern metal classic. Chris Motionless doing Slaughterhouse 2, which is my second favorite song on the album because I'm a big Motionless and White fan. There's so much I can say about this album. The A24 style sound effects that are inspired by horror movies, the very obvious jump scares, the intensity of some of the lyrics. The bass line is incredible. The drumming is through the fucking roof. I genuinely do not think that there was a better album from last year than this one. And whether you consider it a metalcore album or a hardcore album, there's one thing that you should know when you listen to this album, and it is that it is fucking peak, and you will begin to start hearing this band's sound, or relatively something like it, in other bands. And if this doesn't influence enough new bands to start using this kind of sound, or taking more hardcore aspects from, you know, bands like On Broken Wings, or, you know, Walls of Jericho, etc., or even stuff like Hatebreed, then I genuinely think that maybe I am wrong. But otherwise, this is what I consider to be a damn near perfect album, if not perfect. And I can't understate enough how much Not to Lose is going to get in terms of popularity because of this album. When I say that this is a modern day Nevermind situation, I mean it. This, I believe, could help propel Not to Lose into some really, really high positions in music, and I'm so happy for them. I'm so happy for how hard they work. I'm so happy for the accolades they've gotten. Even if I fucking hate the Grammys because I think they're scummy, they deserve that Grammy nomination, and I couldn't be happier for them. So to wrap it up in a way that is meaningful, in general, this was a year that I dived headfirst into music for the first time ever. And, well, okay, not ever, but when I dived fully headfirst into a genre that I love. And I couldn't be happier with how that turned out. Now, I understand that I am not as musically educated as someone like Anthony Fantano or Finn McKenty, or really anyone else who has gone through music school. I understand that I am just some fucking kid from Canada that listens to way too much edgy and aggressive music, that just has an opinion and really bad ADHD. I understand all of that, and quite frankly, I don't think my opinion should be taken as gospel. I think my opinion should just be, hey, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, even if he's not as educated. Because I don't like the idea that people's opinions matter because of their education. Because quite frankly, you could still be very uneducated and still know your things about music. And I want to kind of be the antithesis to something like Anthony Fantano, who is seen as a music god because he is very educated, and quite frankly, I don't like him. I think he knows what he talks about, but I also just don't like his opinions because they seem very pretentious, they seem very elitist, and that is something I don't want to do. I don't want to be elitist, I don't want to be pretentious. I value other people's opinions more than one person's. I value other people's opinions, and I respect all people's opinions, and I wish that other people would do the same. Because music snobbery is just not my thing. I'm not a snob when it comes to music. I've never gone to music college. I'm barely learning how to play guitar. I'm not Rick Beato. And quite frankly, My family has literally nothing to do with music. I am just some broke 23-year-old kid from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, that just wants to get his opinion out because he loves aggressive music. And I hope that this list of albums has given people a new recommendation or a new band to check out, because quite frankly, these were my favorite albums of the year. I will be posting all of my Last FM and all of my Apple Music stats to kind of get the idea of how many albums I listened to this year, how many minutes I had, how many artists I listened to, just to get the idea of, oh hey, this guy listened to this and this and this, and he actually knows what he's talking about. All the stats will be at the end. Feel free to watch. For now, that's enough for me. I will be back with more shorts and recommendations and other stuff. Go ahead, check them out, subscribe, hit a like, leave a comment, whatever you want to do. Even follow the channel if you want to. I will always be here. I will take your recommendations. I will give out recommendations. And quite frankly, I am really ready to go into 2025 with a really good mindset and outlook on music. Thank you very much. I'm out.